Good evening, my lovelies. Welcome. I'm Lady Creepypasta. This evening we have two tales of terror in the basement for you. The first one is from Creepypasta Wiki and is entitled Basement Room. So come now, my dears. Lean in closer and we'll begin. Years ago, my family went on a vacation in Cape Cod and we rented a small old house to stay in for 2 weeks. On the main floor was the kitchen, the living room and a bathroom. The bedrooms were on the second floor. There was a basement room downstairs with a washer and dryer, a sofa and a television. On the first night, we were all awakened by a terrible scream from my sister's bedroom. When my dad burst into her room and turned on the light, he found her sitting up in bed, screaming and crying. My parents sat with her and comforted her until she finally calmed down enough to tell them what had scared her. She said that she had been awakened in the middle of the night by a horrible stench. When she opened her eyes, she had seen the entire bedroom soaked in blood from top to bottom. There was blood all over the floor, bloody handprints on the walls, and blood splatters all over the ceiling. We all thought that she had just been having a nightmare, but she refused to go back into her bedroom and stayed in our parents' room for the remainder of the holiday. One evening, my mother was cooking dinner in the kitchen upstairs and my father had gone out on an errand in a nearby town. My sister and I were in the basement room watching TV when all of a sudden the light bulb popped and the TV went off, leaving us in complete darkness. The basement was unfinished and had old stone walls, making it a bit of a creepy place. For a few seconds we just froze, not knowing what to do. Then we started to smell something horrible. It was a terrible stench, and when it hit our noses, we felt nauseous. It smelled like rotting flesh. The smell quickly grew worse, and then we just heard a scratching in the darkness. Something seemed to be scratching at the floor or the walls. We screamed and began scrambling around in the pitch black, trying to find the door. Eventually, we managed to open the door and ran upstairs screaming to our mother. We kept telling her about the disgusting smell and we heard something scratching and scraping around down there. My mother eventually agreed to go down to the basement, replace the bulb and check out the source of the horrible smell. She took a flashlight and a new bulb and disappeared into the darkened basement as we waited for her at the top of the stairs. We expected her to return quickly, but she seemed to be down there for an eternity. Suddenly, we saw her emerge out of the darkness and come running up the stairs. She slammed the basement door behind her and bolted it as fast as she could. She turned to us and we could see her face had completely drained of color. Her eyes were wide with fear and she just said, "I don't want you going down there again." Then she went into the kitchen and called the police. We overheard her conversation on the phone and managed to figure out that she'd seen someone down there in the basement room. As we waited for the police to come, we huddled together in the living room, staring at the basement door. At any moment, we expected to hear someone banging on it or trying to break it down. My mother refused to tell us what she had seen. When the police arrived, my mother greeted them at the front door and ushered them inside. She unbolted the basement door and they went down into the darkness with their flashlights out and their guns drawn. They searched the entire basement room but found nothing. There was no other way out of the basement. No windows, no doors. Whatever was down there would have had to come up through the basement door. After the police left, my mother finally revealed what she had seen down there in the pitch black basement room. As she spoke, she became very still and quiet. She said she had been changing the light bulb downstairs when she began to smell the horrible stench we had described to her. Then she started to hear a faint scratching noise. She shone her flashlight around the room and suddenly caught sight of something crouched between the washer and the dryer. It was a man, crouched on all fours. His clothes were tattered, his hair was wild and tangled, and his face didn't look human. It was twisted in an expression of pure hatred. In that split second, he looked up at my mother, his eyes reflecting the beam from her flashlight. Then he suddenly crawled forward and disappeared through a wall. When my mother saw him simply vanish into thin air, she dropped the flashlight and ran. After that, none of us would go down in the basement. We kept the door locked and bolted. Every night we slept in our parents' room and locked that door too. We cut our holiday short a few days later and just drove home. And now, on to the next tale. This second one is entitled There's a Monster in the Basement and is also from Creepypasta Wiki. Let's get straight to it now, shall we? Dad, there's a monster in the basement. Richard's voice was trembling as he spoke, his eyes darting around like those of a frightened deer. Martin allowed himself a wry smile. Richard had been muttering about the basement for days, probably an after effect of the movie he went to with his friends last Sunday. Might not be a good idea to have young kids watch Hollywood, he mused to himself. Honey, we talked about this. There are no monsters. He typed on without looking back, his fingers dancing over the keyboard. He had to hand in the report by tomorrow, and he's still only halfway there. I saw it! The boy was on the verge of crying. Something black just went into the basement. Martin heaved a sigh as he turned around, telling himself to be patient. The boy seemed awfully scared. All kids are over-imaginative. Think of the closet monster and you'll know. Honey, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's probably just Betty taking a walk around the house. Betty was the big Czech wolf dog his wife Nabil kept. He was not exactly a friendly creature, kept flashing his teeth at Martin whenever he got too close. It might have been a good idea to tell Nabil to get rid of him, but Martin had never found the courage to do so. No, Dad, Betty's sleeping upstairs. The boy was breathing harder and faster now. He kept throwing quick glances over his shoulder, as if watching out for some kind of invisible assailant. Maybe the monster will come and get me. Martin thought about it and realized that he had locked Betty and Nabil's room this morning. Dad, can you close the basement door for me, please? Just in case the monster gets out. Martin looked at the half-finished report and the reproachfully flashing cursor on the screen. Can't we just wait a moment, honey? You see, I've got some work to... No, please! Tears welled up in Richard's eyes. The corners of his mouth drooped, and he was shaking violently. Martin looked at him and saw the eyes of a boy who was truly scared and seeking protection from his father. Damn it. What could he do anyway? He'd been sitting here for hours. He could use a break. He placed his hands on Richard's trembling shoulders and smiled as fatherly as he could. Hey, there you go, big boy. I'm going down to the basement, and if there's nothing there, you've got to be good and let Daddy do his job. Deal? Yes, Dad, Richard answered quickly. Martin descended the stairs, leading the boy by his hand. The first thing that caught his attention was the tiny side door leading to the basement. It was standing ajar, and a gleam of light was shining through the crack. How funny, he thought. He had turned off the light in there last night. Richard? Yes, Dad? Did you turn the basement light on? No, Dad. Of course not. No kid would venture into basements haunted supposedly by monsters. Nabil went to work early today. He passed the basement door on his way to the bathroom this morning, and the lights were off then. The flash of uneasiness was washed away as quickly as it appeared. After all, the doors and windows were shut. Can't hurt to be sure, though. Wait there, honey. Daddy's going in to take a look. Dad? Yeah? If there's a monster, you're going to drive it away, aren't you? The worried look on Richard's face had Martin smiling. Sure thing, honey. Thanks, Dad. The boy seemed finely relieved, and he too was smiling. Martin pushed through the basement door and descended the creaky stairs. Everything was exactly where he had left them. Stacks of old newspapers, a large plastic box, and a wooden shelf where he kept all the tools. For a moment, he thought somebody had actually broken into the house. Seeing that the lights were on, it was a very off chance, but this should put an end to Richard's constant muttering about the basement, though. Martin turned around, only to see Richard standing at the doorway, peeking through a crack between the door and its frame, as if ready to flee. Don't worry, honey, it's all clear, Martin said as he ascended the stairs. There's nothing here. Richard gripped the door handle with both hands and pushed inwards as hard as he could. Martin saw the door swinging at him and jumped back reflexively, only to miss a step and land in a miserable heap at the bottom of the stairs. Get him! The boy screamed. Martin turned and saw the gleaming fangs of Betty. He'd been hiding in the shelf all along. Richard watched with satisfaction as his stepfather's struggles died away. He turned and walked back to his room, locking the door behind him. What an unfortunate accident. Betty had never liked his stepfather. The poor old man went down to the basement, kicked the dog out of his way maybe, and oops. As he sat there with a bag of chips in his hand, he couldn't help but wonder if his mother would ever realize that he never wanted a stepfather. Let me know if you enjoyed these tales, my dears. Find me on social media and let me know there. I'm Lady Creepypasta on both Facebook and Twitter. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave me a comment below and be sure to click on that thumbs up icon as well. For those of you who have just discovered my realm, welcome, my dears. Feel free to have a wander, but before you leave, hit that subscribe button as well. For those of you who have found me on YouTube, hit that bell icon to be notified of new uploads. That's all I have for you this evening, my dears. Till next time, sweet dreams.